Meanwhile, the consumer goods jumped by 0.1%, being the sole index gainer of the day. Well, there you have it, and I'm being joined by Mr. Olaide Banu, a research analyst at Atlas Portfolio Limited. He joins us now via audio call. Hello, Mr. Banu. Good to have you. Hello, Olaide. Can you hear me?
Hello, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're looking at what happened yesterday. We saw bearish sentiment returning to the domestic equities market. We also saw, investors taking profits of FBN holdings, and then there was this 5.5% drop at the end of the trading day. Help us understand, give us an analysis of the activities that took place yesterday.
Yeah, the market yesterday took profits from the recent positive sentiment. That's from the 3 successive sessions of positive sentiment, and to decline by 0.14%. And this was driven by the profit taking, especially solely by the financial sector stocks in the market, among which are First Bank, the ETI, Access Bank, UBA, NEM Insurance, Cornerstone Insurance, among others. But the bearish sentiment was led by the Champion Bureau that declined by 9.79%. So it's just mainly by the profit taken from investors.
Oh, okay. But then precisely the all-share index, we saw that it fell by 0.1% to 53,193.98. And then we look at the month to date and then year to date gains, which moderated to plus 0.4% and plus 24.5% respectively. Would like you to give us your take on the movement of the index fundamentally. Now, even though the market is volatile, the index seems strong. Now, what are the advantages here?
Yeah, in April and May, the market had a very bullish sentiment. So it's normal for this month, to be expecting a kind of profit taking as a speaker, and coupled with the fact that the recent tightening of the NPR will also affect the market in this other direction. So this period, we should be seeing a kind of seesaw sentiment, that kind of profit taking, bargain hunting, among others like that.
All right, let's look at Transcorp now. It was the most traded stock by volume, and we saw that at 103.56 million units. And then Presco was the most traded stock by value, and that was at 212.07 million naira. Now, talk to us about these two stocks. What are the support level from the investors?
Yeah, Transcorp in recent time have actually been on a high bid. Sometimes it's trade, the bids sometimes go above 50 million units in terms of trades. But if you look at the price itself, the price has been very, I would say, okay, yes, very moderate compared to what the financial sector, the financial report of the company is doing. As at last, even as at Q1, the company had a very good performance of the financial. So investors are tending to back Transcorp, and so many investors have invested in Transcorp in the past at around 90 kobo, 95 kobo. So many of them are still probably taking profit, and while many have invested in around 5 naira or so, which are believing, okay, yes, if they buy into it now, with that positive performance on their financials, the stock can still do around 2 naira.
All right, let's look at Presco now. You've just talked about Transcorp. Let's talk about Presco.
For Presco in recent time did about around 200 naira. So before coming down to about 160 something naira. So it's a kind of bargain hunting as we speak. Some investors are looking at it as a very cheap price, around 162, before going up higher for the meantime. So it's a kind of bargain hunting. So I believe some kind of core investors are looking at it, because what Presco did was just about 11.4% of the total value for the market yesterday.
All right, now let's look at the sectoral performance. It was mixed yesterday. For example, we had insurance declining by 1.8%, banking declining by 0.9%. But then when we come to the industrial goods and oil and gas indices, we saw that closing flat. Now, how would you describe this sentiment?
Yeah, for the oil and gas sector, closing flat, this is the second session. Yesterday was the second session, consecutive session that closed flat. And if you look at the oil price in the global market, even at the before coming online this morning, it was doing around $123 per barrel. So is a kind of relatively cautious trading for investors in the in the oil industry. So many of them are looking at either to hold or to buy more in the industry. So for the finance sector, majority, the banking and the insurance, what actually drove the market yesterday downwards was just the profit taking around these particular stocks like the First Bank, the ETI, Access Bank, Stanbic IBTC, Access Bank also. So as well as Cornerstone Insurance, Name Insurance, it's just driven by the financial industry alone yesterday, and why the consumer goods and industrial goods was up. Looking at WAPCO that gained yesterday, looking at Dangote Sugar that gained yesterday, looking at Kutix in the industrial sector of the market. So it's a kind of mixed sentiment, as I said, it's a mixed sentiment around this sector performance.
All right, I see you already talked about the consumer goods, which of course jumped by 0.1%, and it was the sole index gainer of the day, like you rightly mentioned. But then, is this the new investors' interest? Is that what we're saying play out now?
Yeah, we begin to see some kind of investor interest in those sector, given the fact that the prices of those stocks are relatively still okay and relatively cheap. Looking at compared to their financial reports of those companies, nearly all the companies in the market have a positive Q1 report. So not all of them actually, but many of them are the positive one. So it's a good indicator for investors to come into those particular sector and the market at large.
Well, absolutely. Let's look at the flip side now. Champion lost 9.8%. Cornerstone, you've already talked about insurance and everything that happened in that industry. But then, let's look at it on the flip side now. Champion losing 9.8%. Cornerstone Insurance losing 9.7%. And then, we also have Keverton gaining 7.3%. And then FCN Cocoa recording plus 5.9%, as the most significant gains of the day. What do you think is driving sentiments around these?
Yeah, for the champion, is strictly just bargain hunting because the price has been relatively downward compared to what it did around May. So it's a bargain hunting. Don't be surprised if you start seeing champion gaining today. So it's a kind of bargain hunting for some investors. Some people are bidding at lower price just to make a good return for themselves. So it's not to the decline in champion. It's not that okay. Probably it was a special kind of decline on that price. So as I said, don't be surprised if you see a champion gaining today. And for Keverton, the price has been at 1.09 kobo. Is relatively low compared to what it was doing before, at least at the early part of this year, around almost 2 naira, if not above 2 naira around that time. So it's relatively okay, and I believe some investors are looking at that particular stock for investment, and looking at FTN Cocoa, the Transcorp itself. I've talked about Transcorp. The FTN Cocoa, 34 kobo is not it's not too big, but it's just mainly just bargain hunting for some investors in the market. And if you look at the market breadth at large, it's just marginally negative looking because investors are cautious about trading in the market as we speak.
All right, thank you. Generally, let's look at today. What's your outlook for today?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Olaide? Can you hear me now, Olaide?
Hello?
I can hear you. If you can hear me, Olaide, what's your outlook for today? All right, sadly, I guess Olaide cannot hear me. But of course, we were talking about equities market, what happened yesterday. And we saw some sectors that closed flat. And we also saw some sectors that we could probably say declined. And we also saw gains in some sectors. And we've had a wonderful conversation with him. And if he's still with us, maybe we'll just take his outlook for the day. Olaide, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
As you said, currently the market has been on negative sentiment before coming online this morning. So though there are some stocks that are doing quite well, So the likes of Airtel Africa are doing quite well. The likes of eTransact is doing quite well before coming. But this negative sentiment is being driven by the decline in the boa industry at large, the boa food and the boa cement. So let's look at how the market is going to turn out. If Airtel will be the one to lead the market upward, or is still going to be the boa food and the other ones that is going to decline the markets for the second session.
All right, Olaide. Just before you go, I'd like to know what your word to investors is this morning.
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. What do you say, please?
Okay, I was saying just before you go, what's your word for, or let's say your word to investors?
My advice to investors is to be cautious about the market if they can if they can get the stock. But generally, the investment in the stock as I speak are quite cheap, and it's a good investment for the long-term investors. Looking at other asset classes, investment class that you can look at. So it's still a very good one for investors to come in, and especially for the long-term investors.
All right, thank you so much, Olaide Banu, for coming on the show and for sharing your thoughts with us.
You're welcome.
All right, we've been speaking with Olaide Banu, research analyst at Atlas Portfolio Limited, and of course, we had a great conversation with him.